In the history of humanity, few individuals have managed to transform a life filled with adversity into a legacy of global impact. One of these remarkable people is Oprah Winfrey. Born into poverty, faced with abuse, rejection, and nearly insurmountable barriers, she not only endured, but rose above it all to become one of the most powerful communicators in the world. Oprah stands as a universal symbol of resilience and hope. Her story is not simply one of fame and fortune, but of authenticity, compassion, and the courage to never give up. Today, we will dive deeply into Oprah's life journey, uncovering not just who she is, but what lessons each step of her extraordinary path can teach us. Oprah Winfrey was born on January 29, 1954, in the small town of Kosciuszko, Mississippi. Her arrival into the world did not carry the promise of privilege or opportunity. Instead, she came into a time and place marked by racial segregation, economic struggle, and generational hardship. The wooden house where she spent her early years had no running water, no electricity, and no modern comforts. Yet within those humble walls lived a child whose destiny would one day stretch far beyond the limitations of her birthplace. Raised in her grandmother's care, Oprah's childhood was both strict and formative. Her grandmother, Hattie Mae, recognized early on that this little girl had a gift with words. She encouraged Oprah to speak at church services, where, even as a small child, she amazed adults with her powerful recitations of Bible verses. People would look at her with astonishment, wondering how such a young girl could command so much presence. These early experiences taught Oprah something invaluable. Words held power. They could move hearts, stir emotions, and even change the course of a day. It was a lesson that would become a cornerstone of her entire life, but the beauty of her voice existed alongside deep pain. Oprah's early childhood was not free of suffering. At the tender age of 9, she was subjected to abuse and experience that left invisible scars and tested her spirit. Instead of being protected, she often felt unsafe and unheard. As the years passed, instability became a pattern. She was sent to live with different relatives, moving between households, trying to adapt to environments that ranged from nurturing to neglectful. For a child seeking stability, it was a world of constant disruption by adolescence. The weight of her struggles seemed almost unbearable. At just 14 years old, Oprah became pregnant. The child lived only a few days, leaving her with a heartbreak few young girls could endure. For many, this moment might have been the end of hope, the confirmation of a destiny locked in pain and despair. But for Oprah, though the grief was profound, it also became a turning point. She later described it as a moment where she realized her life had to take on a different meaning. She could not allow her circumstances to dictate her future. It was the birth of resilience, forged in the crucible of suffering. School became her refuge, and books became her salvation. While the world around her seemed intent on reminding her of what she lacked, literature offered her visions of what was possible. Every page she turned opened a window into worlds larger than her own, a world where women had power, where ideas mattered, where dreams could be realized. Reading ignited her imagination and gave her the sense that there was more waiting for her beyond the dusty roads of Mississippi. She once said that books were her ticket to freedom, and in those formative years, that truth was already taking root in her heart. This period of her life was not one of outward success, but of inner preparation. Each hardship carved out a deeper reservoir of empathy. Each loss planted seeds of determination. The child who recited Bible verses in church, who faced pain and disappointment before most children even understood the weight of such things, was quietly preparing for a future in which she would touch millions of lives. It is a reminder that greatness often begins in the shadows, in moments that feel like endings but are really beginnings in disguise. By the end of her childhood, Oprah had endured more than many face in a lifetime, and yet she carried within her a spark, a sense that she was meant for something more. The struggles of her early years did not define her destiny, but instead gave her the strength, compassion, and hunger to create a new story for herself. The world would one day come to know her as a woman of immense power and influence. But here, in the quiet struggles of Mississippi, the foundation of that woman was being laid. When Oprah moved to Nashville to live with her father, Vernon Winfrey, her life took on a new rhythm. Vernon was a man of discipline, structure, and high expectations. Unlike the instability she had experienced in earlier years, this home offered rules and accountability. For a teenager who had grown up in chaos, the shift was not easy, yet it was exactly what she needed. Vernon insisted that Oprah dedicate herself to education, requiring her to read a book every week and write detailed reports. Though demanding, this practice gave her a foundation that would shape her thinking for years to come. It was here that she discovered not only the joy of reading, but also the power of reflection, analysis, and communication. At school, Oprah began to stand out. Her natural talent for speaking, honed through church recitations in her childhood, now blossomed in debate clubs and oratory contests. Teachers noticed her ability to bring words to life, to give them emotion and weight. She was not simply reading, she was embodying the message, and audiences responded. For a girl who had once felt voiceless, this recognition was transformative. It showed her that her voice could be a gift not only to herself, but to the world around her. At 17, a pivotal moment arrived. Oprah entered a local beauty pageant and, to her surprise, won first place. More than the title or the crown, the real prize was the opportunity it opened, a part-time job at a local radio station. Stepping into that studio for the first time was like stepping into a new universe. The smell of old microphones, the dim lights of the control room, the buzz of voices over the airwaves, all of it awakened a passion inside her. Oprah realized that communication was not just a skill, it was her calling. Behind the microphone, she felt at home. The radio became her training ground. She learned the rhythm of live broadcasting, the importance of clarity, and the responsibility of connecting with unseen listeners. Her youthful enthusiasm was balanced by an emotional depth that made her words resonate. Listeners could sense her authenticity even without seeing her face. It was an early preview of what would later make her a global icon. The ability to reach hearts through honesty and presence. Her career advanced quickly. By her late teens, she achieved a historic milestone. She became the first African-American woman to anchor the news at a local television station in Nashville. For many, it seemed improbable that a young black woman in the 1970s could claim such a position. But Oprah's undeniable talent broke barriers. She walked into newsrooms, where she was often the only woman of color, surrounded by skepticism and scrutiny. Yet she persevered. The environment was not always welcoming. She faced whispers, doubts, and the weight of representing more than just herself. But rather than shrinking under the pressure, Oprah leaned into her authenticity. She spoke the news not with cold detachment, but with warmth and humanity. These experiences in radio and television were more than professional steps. They were confidence builders, each one affirming that she had a place in a world that often told her otherwise. Every microphone she touched was another opportunity to reclaim her voice, to heal the wounds of a childhood marked by silence and pain. It was proof that even when beginnings are marked by loss and trauma, the story can evolve into one of triumph and impact. By the end of her teenage years, Oprah had walked a path few could imagine. From poverty in Mississippi to a newsroom in Nashville, she had already defied expectations. Yet this was just the beginning. The stage was being set for her true transformation. What started as a teenage girl speaking into a radio microphone would soon evolve into one of the most influential voices of modern history. The seeds of greatness had been planted, and they were beginning to grow. The early 1980s marked a decisive chapter in Oprah's life. After gaining experience in radio and television, she was offered a chance to host a struggling morning talk show in Chicago called AM Chicago. The program was near the bottom of local ratings, overshadowed by more established competitors. For many presenters, such a role would have seemed like a dead end, but for Oprah, it was an opportunity. She accepted the challenge with determination, carrying with her the lessons of resilience, authenticity, and connection that had guided her since childhood. From her very first episodes, something remarkable happened. The energy in the studio changed. Viewers who had once ignored the show suddenly tuned in. Oprah's natural warmth and conversational style made audiences feel as though she was speaking directly to them. She laughed openly, cried without shame, and asked the kinds of questions others avoided. Unlike the rigid and distant hosts of the time, Oprah's approach was rooted in honesty. She was not playing a role, she was being herself. That authenticity became her trademark, and within months, the ratings of AM Chicago skyrocketed. Her rise was not just about numbers, it was about a shift in the culture of television. Oprah gave people permission to talk about subjects once considered too personal or taboo for daytime TV: trauma, addiction, healing, spirituality, and self-worth. She created a space where ordinary people felt seen and heard, where their struggles were validated rather than hidden. For millions of viewers, turning on the television each day became more than entertainment. It became a moment of connection, even healing. In 1986, her success led to the national launch of the Oprah Winfrey Show. What began as a regional talk show became the most watched daytime program in America. Broadcast in over 100 countries at its peak, it reached tens of millions of viewers each week. Oprah had transformed from a local personality into a global voice. She was no longer just reporting news or moderating discussions. She was shaping cultural conversations. The stage had become her platform for impact. One of the most powerful aspects of her show was her willingness to share her own story. By opening up about her struggles with weight, self-esteem, and her painful past, Oprah created an atmosphere of trust. Viewers saw not a distant celebrity, but a human being who had walked through fire and emerged stronger. This vulnerability broke down barriers between host and audience. People did not just watch Oprah, they felt they knew her. The television industry had never seen anything like it. Competitors tried to imitate her formula, but what they could not replicate was the authenticity that defined her presence. For Oprah, the camera was not a shield, but a bridge. Every episode was another chance to bring light to difficult topics, to encourage self-reflection, and to remind viewers of their own worth. By the late 1980s, Oprah was no longer simply a talk show host. She was a cultural force. The little girl from Mississippi who had once felt silenced was now giving millions of people their voice. Her transformation on stage was more than a career milestone. It was the embodiment of her journey from adversity to empowerment. The world was beginning to understand that Oprah was not just a presenter, she was a phenomenon. The success of the Oprah Winfrey Show was only the beginning. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, Oprah had built something far larger than a popular talk show. She had built a brand, an identity, and a movement. But she was not content to simply remain a host under the control of networks. She understood that true influence required ownership. In a bold and unprecedented move, she founded Harpo Productions, her own production company. With this decision, Oprah not only secured creative control over her show, but also set a new standard for women in media, particularly women of color. She became one of the first Black women in America to own and run a major studio. This ownership gave her freedom to shape her program on her own terms. No longer bound by corporate scripts or limitations, Oprah expanded the scope of her content. Harpo produced not only her television show, but also films, series, and later, a magazine. Every project carried her unmistakable signature: authenticity, empathy, and a desire to uplift others. The very name Harpo, which is Oprah spelled backward, symbolized her ability to flip the script of her own life and take control of her destiny. The scale of her influence grew rapidly. Her book club became a cultural phenomenon, capable of turning little-known authors into overnight bestsellers. Writers who once struggled to find an audience suddenly had millions of readers, thanks to Oprah's endorsement. Beyond entertainment, she shaped the way people thought, read, and even lived. Her program introduced wellness experts, spiritual teachers, and thinkers whose ideas reached homes across the globe. Oprah had become not just a media figure, but a guide in people's personal journeys. As her wealth and influence grew, Oprah refused to measure success only by ratings or profits. She became deeply committed to philanthropy, directing her resources toward education and empowerment. One of her most ambitious projects was the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls in South Africa. This school gave young women from disadvantaged backgrounds access to world-class education and mentorship. For Oprah, who had once found hope in the pages of books, investing in education was a way to multiply that gift across generations. By the 1990s and early 2000s, Oprah had transcended the role of a television host. She was now a businesswoman, an entrepreneur, and a philanthropist of historic stature. Forbes listed her among the wealthiest women in the world, yet her greatest pride came from the lives she helped transform. She often spoke about how money was valuable only when used as a tool to do good. Her empire was not built merely for herself, but as a platform to empower others. At the height of her influence, Oprah was shaping culture in ways few could rival. She could inspire millions to read a book, donate to a cause, or believe in themselves in a single broadcast. She had built an empire on the foundation of authenticity and compassion. The little girl who once lived in poverty now stood as a global icon, redefining what it meant to succeed. Her rise to power was not just personal triumph, it was proof that resilience, vision, and integrity could transform not only one life, but the world. As The Oprah Winfrey Show came to an end in 2011, after 25 years on air, many wondered if Oprah's influence would fade without her daily presence in living rooms across America. Instead, her impact only deepened. What she had built was not confined to a time slot, it was a legacy carried in the hearts of millions. Oprah had become far more than a talk show host. She was a symbol of what resilience, authenticity, and vision could achieve. Her journey into the next chapter of life focused even more on purpose. Through her network OWN, she continued to create content centered on inspiration, self-discovery, and growth. She gave platforms to voices that echoed her own mission, encouraging people to live with intention, faith, and courage. While ratings and numbers mattered less now, the quality of impact mattered more. Oprah was no longer chasing success. She was cultivating significance. One of her greatest contributions during this stage has been the way she normalized conversations around spirituality and meaning. She invited authors, teachers, and thought leaders to explore subjects of faith, mindfulness, and personal transformation on a mainstream stage. Millions who might never have engaged with these ideas found themselves curious and inspired. Oprah's ability to weave together personal storytelling with universal truths created a safe space for reflection. For many, she became not just a broadcaster, but a mentor from afar. Her philanthropy also grew more intentional. Beyond the school in South Africa, Oprah invested in scholarships, relief programs, and initiatives that focused on breaking cycles of poverty and uplifting women and children. She demonstrated that leadership is not about titles or recognition, but about service. Even as she amassed accolades, awards, and recognition on global stages, her core message remained consistent. True success is measured by the number of lives you uplift. As the years passed, Oprah embraced her role as a living symbol of possibility. She spoke openly about aging, identity, and purpose, proving that reinvention never ends. To see her in her 70s, still commanding presence, still radiating warmth, is to witness the power of a life fully lived. She is not remembered solely for her achievements, but for the humanity she never lost. In every interview, every speech, and every project, she reflects the journey from pain to power, from silence to voice. Oprah's living legacy is not etched in monuments or awards, but in people. It lives in the young girl who dares to dream bigger after reading a book she recommended, in the family that finds healing after watching her conversations on trauma, and in the student whose life trajectory is changed because of an opportunity she funded. Her story reminds us that legacy is not built at the end of a career, it is built every day with every act of authenticity and courage. Today, when we speak of Oprah Winfrey, we speak of more than a person. We speak of an idea that no matter how humble your beginnings, no matter how heavy your burdens, it is possible to rise, to shine, and to give back. That is the enduring power of her Lagosha light that continues to guide others long after the cameras stop rolling. The story of Oprah Winfrey is not simply one of fame or wealthy, it is a story of transformation. From a childhood marked by poverty and pain, she rose to become one of the most powerful women in the world, using her voice to inspire, uplift, and heal. Her journey reminds us that our beginnings do not define our endings. Each challenge can be turned into a stepping stone, each setback into a lesson, each wound into a source of strength. What makes Oprah extraordinary is not only what she achieved, but how she achieved it with authenticity, vulnerability, and compassion. She showed that leadership is not about domination, but about service. That true power comes not from titles, but from the ability to touch lives. Her story is proof that even the darkest past can give birth to a radiant future. As we reflect on her legacy, we are invited to ask ourselves, how can we use our own voices to create impact? How can we turn our struggles into stories of hope? Oprah's life tells us that greatness is not reserved for a select few. It is available to all who dare to believe in themselves and to serve others along the way. And now, I turn the question to you. From where are you watching this story, and what did it awaken in you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to hear your reflections. And if Oprah's journey inspired you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Together, we can continue building a community of inspiration, one story at a time.